It looks like a dream, an affordable classic sailboat promising adventure on the open water. Yet beneath the glossy surface lurk chemical time bombs and lethal shortcuts from the golden age of mass production. Surveyors have documented hulls shattered by hidden osmosis rot and catastrophic keel failures that stunned the Coast Guard. Why did boat builders risk lives on untested laminates? And how close could your next boat be to disaster? The answer begins below the waterline. In the rush to build affordable dreams, boatyards in the 1970s turned to fiberglass, a material that promised strength and longevity, but too often delivered neither. The secret culprit was the chemistry itself. Polyester resin, the backbone of most hulls from that era, reacts slowly with water. Over years, even the tiniest molecule of moisture creeps through the gel coat and into microscopic voids left behind by hurried chopper gun spray-up. Inside those hidden pockets, water and resin begin a quiet war, the resin breaking down, forming acids and glycols and building pressure until the hull blisters from within. This process, known as osmosis, can stay invisible for years. Then one spring haul out, the owner scrapes away anti-fouling and finds a rash of soft, weeping blisters. The damage is more than skin deep. What starts as a handful of pinpricks soon spreads into hundreds, sometimes thousands of blisters, each one a tiny chemical bomb eating away at the laminate. Marine surveyors warn that once this cycle begins, the timeline to visible damage can be as short as 5 years, or stretch to 20 years if the boat is lucky. But luck eventually runs out. The story of Jim Walters and his Columbia 30 is a warning written in invoices. Jim bought his boat for a bargain and discovered a hull riddled with deep blisters. The repair estimate ballooned to $60,000, more than the price of a new boat. His experience is echoed in forms and surveyor reports. If it is an old production hull with hundreds of blisters, assume you are buying a restoration, not just a boat. Before 1975, few builders bothered with barrier coats. The first true barrier technology, introduced by Steve Smith, offered a layer of defense, but most boats from the so-called golden era missed out. Without that shield, water finds its way in, drawn by the osmotic pressure inside those microvoids. Salt water, heat, and age only accelerate the process. Repairs are invasive and expensive, removing the gel coat, drying the hull for months, and applying layers of epoxy. For many owners, the cost outweighs the value. Some walk away, leaving their boats to rot in the back of the boatyard, blisters spreading like a silent infection. For every glossy classic on the market, there are dozens hiding chemical decay beneath the surface. Osmotic blistering is not just ugly. It signals a hull losing its strength and sets the stage for structural failures that can put lives at risk. The damage starts small, but the consequences can be catastrophic. In the world of old fiberglass, water is the patient enemy, and time is always on its side. Surveyor Jack Horner once pressed his palm against the hull of a mid-1980s Hunter 31 and watched the fiberglass flex with barely any effort. In his 1984 report, he wrote that the tabbing had let go in 3 places, and the boat was marketed as blue water capable. That quiet warning echoed through the industry, but few listened. Cost-cutting meant resin-starved laminates, thin, brittle hulls where glass fibers barely held together. The result was hulls that creaked and yielded under load, sometimes even from the wake of a passing ferry. The real danger, though, lurked beneath the waterline. Keel bolts, meant to anchor thousands of pounds of ballast, were often undersized or poorly torqued. In the O'Day 34, sinking off Cape Cod in August 1984, the crew heard a sharp bang, then a low groan. The keel bolts sheared in sequence, one after another, as the hull flexed in 7-foot seas. Within minutes, the cabin filled with water. The Coast Guard rescue report logged the boat as awash in under 4 minutes. Survivors remembered the chaos. They said the boat rolled to port. They heard cracking. Then the water rushed in. They barely had time to launch the dinghy and activate the EPIRB. Manufacturing shortcuts did not appear overnight. Subcontracted layup teams were pushed to meet quotas, sometimes skipping resin consolidation or rushing the cure. The result was micro cracks around bolt holes, uneven bedding, and washer plates that rusted unseen inside the stub. Insurance adjusters reviewing post-grounding claims found a pattern. Boats that had struck bottom even lightly often developed invisible fractures. Weeks or years later, a second knock or a hard beat to windward would finish the job. Forensic bolt analysis revealed micro-fractures and corrosion at the root threads, stress lines radiating from the hull to keel joint. Sometimes the only warning was a brown stain on the bilge floor or a slight shift in the hull imprint. By the late 1980s, insurers began requiring internal imaging and full bolt removal after any grounding. But for thousands of production boats already afloat, the risks remain. A single failed bolt can turn a forgotten shortcut into a disaster. Hull strength is only as reliable as the hands that built it and the silent fatigue that time brings. For every glossy brochure promising adventure, there is a surveyor's sketch mapping the hidden paths where disaster waits. Decks that once gleamed with promise now hide a far more expensive truth. In the rush to keep costs down, many builders of the late 70s and early 80s turned to balsa wood as a core material for decks and cabin tops. Lightweight and easy to shape, balsa seemed perfect until water found its way in. Every screw hole, stanchion base, or poorly sealed fitting became a potential entry point. Once moisture seeps into the balsa, rot sets in quickly. The wood loses strength, turning to a dark, spongy pulp that cannot support foot traffic, let alone the loads from rigging and hardware. Surveyors routinely find entire deck sections so soft that a boot heel leaves a lasting dent. Repairing this kind of damage is rarely simple. A full deck raccord often means peeling away the entire fiberglass skin, chiseling out rotten wood, and rebuilding layer by painstaking layer. The bill can easily top $20,000, and that is if the rot has not spread to structural areas. Many owners, faced with these numbers, try to hide the damage with cosmetic fixes, injecting epoxy or laying down a fresh coat of paint. But the underlying weakness remains, waiting for the next hard tack or heavy storm to reveal itself. Below the waterline, the story turns even more dangerous. Foam-filled rudders, another shortcut of the era, were meant to be maintenance-free. But when the seal at the top of the rudder fails, water creeps in, saturating the foam. In cold climates, that water freezes and expands, cracking the blade from the inside. In 1982, a C&C 25 near Kingston lost steering mid-tack when its rudder snapped clean off at the shaft. Crew testimony from that October night described the sudden silence. After the helm locked, there was nothing. The blade just tore off. They drifted for hours before rescue, their boat at the mercy of the wind. For every survivor account, there are dozens of boats still afloat with waterlogged rudders, their owners unaware of the ticking clock beneath their feet. Bulkheads form the core of a sailboat's strength, yet in many 1970s and 1980s models, they are often barely attached, secured by thin, brittle fiberglass tabbing that is prone to cracking or separating. Surveyors recall pressing a hand to the hull and watching the whole side flex, a clear sign the internal structure has failed. When tabbing lets go, the hull loses rigidity, and chain plates meant to anchor the rig can rip free from rotted plywood or delaminated bulkheads. In heavy weather, even a small failure can escalate fast. Sailors have described the sudden pop of a chain plate tearing loose, the rigging sagging, and the mast threatening to fall. Hidden rot at the mast step is just as dangerous. Water seeps into the core beneath the mast, softening balsa or plywood until it compresses under load. The mast base sinks, the deck bulges, and the rig's alignment shifts, sometimes so slowly that the only warning is a faint crack in the headliner or a rust stain at the mast base. Moisture meters often spike red, but many owners miss the signs until it is too late. Offshore, these weaknesses become critical. Boats with low stability ratios, barely above 100, struggle to right themselves after a knockdown. Hulls flex, rigging loads shift, and the boat's behavior turns unpredictable. Then the engine dies. For owners of Orphaned Volvo MD engines or early Yanmar engines, silence can mean the end. Marine mechanic Paul Calder is blunt. Parts for those engines are simply unavailable. Even rebuilt kits are rare. Owners are forced to MacGyver repairs with hardware store bits. It is dangerous. Some limp along with makeshift fuel pumps, only to be towed 80 miles and handed a $15,000 repower bill. Surveyors estimate a full repower for these obsolete diesels runs $14,000 to $24,000, not counting lost seasons or tow fees. When hulls flex, chain plates creak, and engines fall silent, the dream of freedom turns into a call for rescue, far from shore, where every shortcut becomes a matter of survival. Today, hundreds of aging production sailboats still fill marinas, many with hidden flaws invisible to the untrained eye. As demand for affordable classics grows, so does the risk. The real voyage is not just about adventure, it is knowing what is beneath your feet. Your safety depends on asking the right questions first.